Don't eat that. The waitress lunges across the table just as the Mafia boss lifts his fork, and what she says next freezes every gun in the room. The food is poisoned, the death won't be immediate, and whoever ordered it planned for him to walk out alive, before collapsing later, so who wanted him gone quietly? If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. Bellagio Nero went dead silent the moment the fork lifted toward Casper Lenert's lips. The most feared man in the city, calm, untouchable. The shadow that owned every dark corner was seconds from his first bite, when a voice shattered the stillness. Don't eat that. Every head whipped toward the dining room floor. Ellie Thomas stood there, chest heaving, eyes wild with terror she couldn't hide. Her white shirt was wrinkled, her black apron twisted at the waist, her hands trembling so violently she had to grip them together. She wasn't supposed to be back yet. She wasn't supposed to know anything, but she stumbled forward anyway, nearly knocking into a chair. Please, she gasped, staring at the plate like it was a loaded gun. Don't eat it. Please, Mr. Lenertz. Don't. Casper's men moved instantly, hands sliding toward concealed weapons, bodies shifting into formation. Diners froze mid-conversation. Glasses stopped halfway to mouths. The room held its breath, but Casper raised one tattooed hand. Silence obeyed him. His dark hair was slicked back perfectly. His black suit tailored to precision. The collar of his shirt opened just enough to reveal the ink crawling up his neck. A thin gold chain glinted under the amber lighting. His face was sharp, angular, handsome in the way predators are, handsome, beautiful, and deadly in equal measure. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stared at Ellie with eyes that had seen men beg and bleed. Why? His voice was low, controlled, lethal in its calm. How do you know what's in my food? Ellie's lips trembled. Her dark hair, pulled back into a ponytail, had come loose at the sides. Strands clung to her flushed cheeks. She looked small, standing there, young, ordinary, terrified, but she didn't run. Her answer came out barely louder than a whisper. Because. She swallowed hard, forcing the words past the terror. Because I heard them say it was poisoned. A ripple of shock moved through the room like a physical force. Casper's jaw tightened. His fork, still gripped in his tattooed hand, hovered motionless above the plate. Pesto pasta with grilled shrimp, his favorite, the same dish he'd ordered every Thursday for 3 years. His men exchanged razor-sharp glances. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. One of his lieutenants, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running through his eyebrow, stepped forward. Boss? Casper didn't acknowledge him. His gaze stayed locked on Ellie. Who? He asked. One word, no wasted breath. Ellie's voice cracked. I don't know his name, but I heard the manager. On the phone. In the back hallway. She pointed toward the kitchen with a shaking hand. He said the food was ready, that you wouldn't die here, that it would happen after you left. The words landed like stones in water, heavy, spreading, irreversible. Casper set the fork down slowly. It clicked against the porcelain plate, the only sound in the entire restaurant. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin, eyes never leaving Ellie's face. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. The temperature seemed to drop. You're sure? He asked. Ellie nodded frantically. Yes, I swear. I heard him say it. He said slow acting. He said clean. He said... Her voice broke. He said no one would ever know. Casper's eyes narrowed. He tilted his head slightly, studying her the way a scientist studies a specimen. And why? He said softly. Would you risk your life to tell me this? The question hung in the air like a blade. Ellie blinked. Tears pooled at the corners of her eyes but didn't fall. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Because, she whispered, it's wrong. For a long moment, Casper said nothing. Then, slowly, deliberately, he pushed the plate away from him. The porcelain scraped against the white tablecloth. He turned his head toward his lieutenant. Lock the doors. The man moved immediately. 2 others followed. Within seconds, the soft click of locks echoed from the entrance and the side exit near the bar. No one was leaving. The remaining diners, 3 couples, a lone businessman, 2 women sharing wine, sat frozen in their seats. They knew better than to speak, better than to move. Casper rose from his chair. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and when he stood, The room seemed to shrink around him. His presence filled every corner, every shadow. He buttoned his suit jacket with one hand, adjusted the chain at his neck with the other, and turned toward Ellie. She flinched but didn't back away. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. His voice was almost kind. Almost. Then he looked past her, toward the kitchen door. "Bring him out." Two of his men disappeared through the swinging door. The sound of muffled shouting erupted immediately, panicked, desperate. Chairs scraped. Something metal clattered to the floor. Ellie's knees buckled slightly. She grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. Casper noticed. He gestured to one of his men. "Get her a chair." "I'm fine," Ellie said quickly. Too quickly. "Sit," Casper said. Not a suggestion. A chair appeared behind her. She sank into it, hands gripping the armrests like they were lifelines. The kitchen door swung open again. This time Casper's men dragged someone out, a middle-aged man in a manager's uniform, his face pale, his eyes darting wildly around the room. "Mr. Lenertz," the manager stammered. I don't know what she's talking about." Casper raised a hand. The man's mouth snapped shut. "We'll get to that," Casper said calmly. He glanced at the plate still sitting on his table, untouched, innocent-looking. "First, I want to know who paid you." The manager's face went white. "I know when I didn't. Don't lie to me." Casper's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The threat was woven into every syllable. "I don't have patience tonight." The manager's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees, hands raised in surrender. Please, Mr. Lenertz, I didn't want to. They said they'd kill my family." "Who?" Casper stepped closer. "Who said that?" The manager sobbed. "I don't know. I swear. They called me. They sent the money. Cash. Untraceable. They said if I didn't do it. Casper crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the trembling man. His tattooed hand rested on his knee, casual, almost relaxed. "How much?" he asked. 50,000, the manager whispered. Casper's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. "For a slow poison. Delivered here. In my favorite dish." The manager nodded, tears streaming down his face. Casper stood. He turned back toward Ellie, who was still sitting in the chair, watching everything unfold with wide, horrified eyes. "You saved my life tonight," he said. Ellie didn't know how to respond. She just nodded. Casper looked at the plate one more time, then at the manager, then at his men. "Take him to the back," he said quietly. "We're not done yet." 3 years earlier, Casper Lenertz had walked into Bellagio Nero for the first time with blood on his hands, not literally, but close enough. He'd just ended a partnership that had lasted a decade, the kind of ending that required silence, precision, and a body that would never be found. He was tired, hungry, and he needed a place where no one would ask questions. Bellagio Nero had been recommended by someone who owed him a favor. Quiet, they'd said. Discreet. The owner knows how to mind his business. That was all Casper needed to hear. The first night, he sat in the corner booth, the one with a clear view of both entrances and the kitchen. He ordered the pesto pasta. It arrived perfectly plated, perfectly seasoned, and when he took the first bite, something rare happened. He relaxed. Not fully, never fully, but enough. The owner, a thin man with silver hair and nervous hands, approached carefully. "Everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Lenertz?" Casper had nodded once. "Keep this table open for me. Every Thursday. Same time." "Of course, sir." And that was it. Bellagio Nero became his sanctuary. Over the months, then years, the restaurant transformed into more than just a place to eat. It became the venue where deals closed over wine, where loyalty was rewarded with expensive meals, where enemies came to offer tribute or beg forgiveness. The staff learned quickly. When Casper was present, you moved with purpose. You didn't linger, you didn't eavesdrop, and you never made him wait. Ellie Thomas had been hired 2 years ago. Casper remembered the night she first served him. She was new, visibly nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she set down the water glass. But she didn't fumble, didn't spill, and when he asked for extra bread, she brought it without asking if he wanted butter or oil. She brought both. Small detail, but Casper noticed details. The next week, she served him again. This time, she remembered his order before he said it. Pesto pasta, grilled shrimp, no pine nuts. "Still, or sparkling water?" "Still," he'd said, watching her carefully. She wrote nothing down, just nodded and disappeared. When the food arrived, it was exactly right. After that, Ellie became his waitress. Not officially, there was no announcement, no formal arrangement, but everyone understood. When Casper came in, Ellie served him. No one else. He tipped her well. Generously, sometimes more than the meal itself cost. She never asked why. Never tried to make conversation. Never treated him like anything other than a customer who preferred silence. And that, Casper realized over time, was why he trusted her. She saw him, she served him, and then she forgot him. At least, that's what he thought. Now, sitting in the locked restaurant with a poisoned plate on his table and Ellie trembling in a chair 6 feet away, Casper realized he'd been wrong. She hadn't forgotten him at all. She'd saved him. Casper turned away from the kitchen door where his men had dragged the manager. The muffled sounds of interrogation echoed faintly from the back hallway, but he ignored them. His focus was on Ellie. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the floor. Her breathing was still uneven. Her shoulders shook slightly, not from cold, but from adrenaline crashing through her system. He walked over slowly, his footsteps deliberate. When he stopped in front of her, she flinched but didn't look up. "Ellie," he said quietly. She lifted her head. Her dark eyes were rimmed red, but no tears had fallen. She looked exhausted, terrified, but also resolute. "Why didn't you just leave?" he asked. The question seemed to catch her off guard. "What? You could have heard that phone call and walked out the back door, clocked out early, gone home." His voice was calm, but his gaze was piercing. "No one would have blamed you. No one would have even known." Ellie swallowed hard. "I thought about it, but you didn't." "No. Why?" She looked away, toward the untouched plate still sitting on his table. "Because..." Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Because you've always been fair to me." Casper's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Fair," he repeated. "Yes." Ellie's hands twisted in her lap. "You tip well. You don't yell. You don't treat me like I'm invisible." She hesitated, then added quietly, "Most people do." Casper was silent for a long moment. "You know what I am," he said finally. It wasn't a question. Ellie nodded. "Everyone knows." "And you still came back. You still shouted. You still risked your life. I couldn't just..." Her voice broke again. This time a tear did fall. She wiped it away quickly, almost angrily. "I couldn't just let you die. Not like that. Not when I could have stopped it." Casper studied her face, the exhaustion, the fear, the stubbornness underneath it all. He'd seen 1,000 people break under pressure, seen men twice her size crumble when faced with violence. But Ellie hadn't run. She'd run toward the danger. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I know." "Then why?" Ellie finally met his eyes. "Because it was the right thing to do." The same answer she'd given before. Simple, honest, infuriatingly brave. Casper exhaled slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He typed something quickly, then slipped it back. "You're going home," he said. Ellie blinked. "What?" "2 of my men will take you. They'll stay outside your building tonight. Tomorrow someone will check in. Make sure you're safe." "I don't need..." "Yes," Casper said firmly. "You do." Ellie opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. He was worried. "Mr. Leonard's." "Casper," he corrected quietly. She blinked again, startled. "Casper," she repeated, the name strange on her tongue. "What's going to happen? To the manager? To whoever paid him?" Casper's jaw tightened. "Nothing you need to see, but..." "Ellie." His voice softened, but the command underneath was unmistakable. "Go home. Let me handle this." She wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, but the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. This was his world, not hers. And tonight, she'd stepped into it. One of Casper's men appeared at his side, a younger guy with kind eyes and a scar on his chin. "Car's ready, boss." Casper nodded. He looked back at Ellie. "Go with him. I'll be in touch." Ellie stood slowly, legs still unsteady. She glanced once more at the poisoned plate, then at Casper. "Thank you," she whispered. Casper's expression softened just barely. "No," he said quietly. "Thank you." She left without another word. And as the door closed behind her, Casper turned back toward the kitchen. The real work was about to begin. The back hallway of Bellagio Nero smelled like garlic, wine, and fear. Casper walked through the kitchen with measured steps, his polished shoes clicking against the tile floor. Pots still simmered on stoves. Knives lay abandoned on cutting boards. The entire kitchen staff had been moved to the walk-in freezer not as punishment, but as precaution. They didn't need to see what happened next. The manager sat in a wooden chair in the storage room, hands zip-tied behind his back, face wet with tears and sweat. Two of Casper's men stood on either side of him like statues. A single overhead bulb cast harsh shadows across the cramped space, lined with industrial shelves stacked with canned tomatoes and olive oil. Casper stepped inside. The door closed softly behind him. The manager's head snapped up. "Please, Mr. Lenertz, please. I have children." "So do a lot of people." Casper's voice was calm, almost conversational. He pulled over a metal stool and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. "That doesn't give you permission to poison me. I didn't want to, I swear. They threatened my family." "You already said that." Casper held up a hand. "Now I need details. Real ones, starting with how they contacted you." The manager's chest heaved. His shirt was soaked through with sweat. "A phone call, 3 weeks ago. Unknown number. A man's voice, I didn't recognize it." "What did he say?" "He knew everything about me. My name, my address, my daughter's school." The manager's voice cracked. He said if I didn't help him, my family would disappear, one by one. Casper's expression remained neutral, but his eyes darkened. "Go on. He said he'd pay me $50,000. Cash, delivered in an envelope to my car. All I had to do was..." The manager's voice dropped to a whisper. "All I had to do was add something to your meal." "What exactly?" "A powder. Tasteless. Odorless. He said it wouldn't kill you immediately, that you'd leave the restaurant fine, that you'd die in your sleep a few hours later. Heart failure, they'd say. Natural causes." Casper leaned forward slightly. "And you believed him?" The manager swallowed. "I didn't know what else to do. He said he'd know if I went to the police. He said he had people watching me, watching my home. Did you see anyone?" "No, but the money showed up exactly where he said it would." That's when I knew he was serious. Casper's jaw tightened. Professional, organized, patient. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't some street-level amateur. This was someone who understood how to operate in shadows, how to leverage fear, how to make murder look like misfortune. "When did you add the poison?" Casper asked. "Tonight, just before your meal was plated. The chef didn't see. No one saw." The manager's voice broke again. I thought I could just do it and it would be over. That my family would be safe. That you could murder me and sleep fine afterward." Casper finished coldly. The manager flinched. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Where's the rest of the poison?" In my locker. In the staff room. A small vial. I only used a pinch, like he told me." Casper nodded to one of his men, who disappeared immediately. He returned 2 minutes later, holding a glass vial the size of a thumb, half full of white powder. Casper took it carefully, holding it up to the light. "This is military grade," he said quietly. "Not something you buy on the street." The manager said nothing. He was crying again, silent tears streaming down his face. Casper pocketed the vial. "The phone call. Did he give you a name? Any identifying information?" "No, just instructions. He called me twice more to confirm. Different numbers each time." "And the money, how was it delivered?" "Envelope under my windshield wiper. No note, just cash." Casper's fingers drummed once against his knee, a rare tell that his mind was working fast. The payment method, the poison, the timing. He looked at the manager. Did he say anything else? Anything that seemed strange or specific? The manager hesitated. "Think carefully," Casper said. His voice was soft, but the threat underneath was unmistakable. "Your life depends on what you tell me next." The manager's breath hitched. He said something at the end of the last call, right before he hung up. "What?" He said, "Tell him this is what happens when you forget old friends." Silence dropped over the room like a stone into deep water. Casper went completely still. His expression didn't change, but his eyes, sharp, cold, calculating, flickered with recognition. Old friends. The phrase echoed in his mind, pulling threads from the past he thought he'd buried. Deals made in blood, partnerships dissolved, profits divided. And one name that rose to the surface like a corpse in a river. Raphael Cade. Casper stood slowly. He buttoned his jacket, adjusted his chain, and turned toward the door. "Boss?" one of his men asked. "Keep him here," Casper said quietly. "Don't let him make any calls. Don't let anyone in or out until I say otherwise." "What about the staff?" Pay them for the night. Send them home. Tell them the restaurant is closed for repairs." Casper paused at the door, glancing back at the manager. "And him?" The manager looked up, eyes wide, desperate. "Keep him breathing," Casper said, "for now." He walked out before anyone could respond. Back in the dining room, the poisoned plate still sat on the table, untouched and damning. Casper stared at it for a long moment, his mind already 3 steps ahead. This wasn't random. This wasn't reckless. This was personal. Rafael Cade had been his partner once. They'd built an empire together, importing, distributing, controlling territories from the docks to the downtown corridors. 50-50 split, equal partnership, until Rafael wanted more. Casper had let him walk away alive. A courtesy. A kindness most men in his position would never offer. Apparently that had been a mistake. One of his lieutenants approached cautiously. "Boss, we traced the payment drop. Offshore account. Routing number matches a shell company we flagged 2 years ago." "Whose company?" The lieutenant hesitated. "Cade's." Casper's expression remained perfectly calm, but his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Find him," he said quietly. "I don't care where he is or who he's hiding behind. Find him." "Yes, sir." Casper picked up the vial of poison from his pocket and held it up to the light again. Professional, calculated, patient. Rafael had tried to kill him without noise, without spectacle, without witnesses. A ghost's assassination. But ghosts, Casper thought coldly, could be hunted too. He set the vial down on the table next to the poisoned plate. "Get me everything," he said. "Financials, locations, associates. I want to know every breath he's taken since he walked away." The lieutenant nodded and disappeared. Casper stood alone in the empty restaurant, staring at the meal that should have killed him. And for the first time in years, he smiled. Not from joy, from certainty. Casper sat alone in the empty restaurant, the poisoned plate still in front of him like evidence at a crime scene. He'd sent his men home an hour ago, told them to regroup in the morning, told them he needed to think. What he really needed was silence. The amber lights had been dimmed. The chairs were stacked on tables. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos sirens in the distance, cars passing, people living their lives without knowing how close death had come tonight. Casper reached into his jacket and pulled out the vial again. He turned it slowly between his fingers, watching the white powder shift inside the glass. "Military grade," he'd said, and he'd meant it. This wasn't street poison. This wasn't something you bought from a desperate chemist in a basement lab. This was refined, professional, the kind of substance that required connections, resources, and knowledge most people didn't have. Rafael had always been smart, calculated, patient. That's why they'd worked so well together, and that's why his betrayal cut deeper than Casper wanted to admit. He set the vial down and pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from his second-in-command. 2 texts asking if he needed anything. He ignored them all and opened a different thread, one he hadn't touched in months. Ellie Thomas. Her number was saved in his contacts from the night she'd started working at Bellagio Nero. Standard procedure. All staff numbers were logged in case of emergencies. He stared at her name for a long moment. Then he typed, "You okay?" He hit send before he could second-guess himself. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Ellie. Yes. Your men are outside. They won't tell me what's happening. Casper. Good. They're not supposed to. Ellie. Are you okay?" The question caught him off guard. No one asked him that. Not his men. Not his associates. Not the people who owed him favors or feared his name. He stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Casper. I'm fine." "Ellie. You're lying." He almost smiled. "Casper. Get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow." "Ellie. Casper. Casper. Sleep. Ellie." He put the phone away before she could respond. The truth was, he wasn't fine. He was angry. But anger was familiar. Anger was useful. What unsettled him was something else entirely. Ellie had saved his life tonight, and she'd done it knowing exactly who he was, knowing what he did, knowing that associating with him, helping him, could put a target on her back. She'd done it anyway. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Her words echoed in his mind, simple and stubborn and impossibly brave. Casper had spent his entire adult life in a world where loyalty was purchased, fear was currency, and morality was a luxury no one could afford. He'd made peace with that, thrived in it. But Ellie didn't operate by those rules. She'd acted not because she owed him, not because she feared him, not because he'd paid her well or treated her with basic decency. She'd acted because she couldn't live with herself if she didn't. And that, Casper realized, was something he hadn't encountered in years. Pure, uncalculated, honest. He picked up the vial again, turning it slowly in the light. Raphael had tried to kill him with patience, with precision, with a poison designed to erase him hours after the act, leaving no witnesses, no evidence, no trail back to the source. It was brilliant, really, except for one flaw. Raphael had underestimated the one thing Casper never paid attention to: goodness. He'd assumed everyone in Casper's orbit operated by the same rules: fear, greed, survival. He'd assumed no one would risk their life to save a monster. He'd been wrong, and that mistake would cost him everything. Casper's phone buzzed. A text from his lieutenant. Got a location. Cade's been using a private estate outside the city, 40 minutes north. Security is tight but manageable. Casper typed back, "Don't move yet. I want eyes on him first. I want to know who he's talking to, who he's meeting, who's funding this. Understood." "What about the manager?" Casper paused. The manager was a loose end, a liability, a man who'd tried to murder him and would have succeeded if not for Ellie's intervention. In his world, there was only one way to handle loose ends, but the manager had children, a family, and he'd been coerced, threatened, manipulated, cornered. Raphael had used him the same way people used weapons: point, shoot, discard. Casper exhaled slowly. "Casper, keep him isolated. No contact with anyone. We'll deal with him after Cade." "You sure, boss?" "Casper, yes." He put the phone down and leaned back in the chair. Mercy wasn't something he gave often. It wasn't something his world rewarded. But tonight had shifted something inside him. Something small, barely perceptible, but present. Ellie had chosen courage over self-preservation. Maybe, just this once, he could choose restraint over retribution. At least until Raphael was handled. The restaurant felt colder now, emptier. Casper stood and walked to the window, staring out at the street below. A couple walked past, arm in arm, laughing about something. A taxi honked. A dog barked in the distance. Normal life. Ordinary life. The kind of life Casper had left behind so long ago he couldn't remember what it felt like. But Ellie lived in that world. She worked doubles to pay rent. She smiled at strangers. She probably went home to a small apartment with secondhand furniture and plants on the windowsill. And now, because of him, she was sitting in that apartment with armed guards outside her door. He pulled out his phone again. "Casper, tomorrow you don't come to work. Take a week off. Paid." The dots appeared. "Ellie, I can't afford that." "Casper, you're not listening. Paid leave. Full salary. Non-negotiable." "Ellie." "Why?" "Casper, because I need to know you're safe while I clean this up." There was a long pause. "Ellie, you're going after whoever did this." It wasn't a question. "Casper." "Yes." "Ellie, be careful." He stared at the screen. No one told him to be careful. No one worried about whether he came back. In his world, you either survived or you didn't. There was no middle ground. But Ellie's message sat there, simple and sincere, like a voice from another universe. "Casper, I will." He meant it. Casper locked the restaurant and walked to his car, a black sedan with tinted windows parked in the alley behind the building. His driver was waiting, but Casper waved him off. "I'll drive myself tonight." The driver nodded and disappeared. Casper slid into the driver's seat and sat in the darkness for a moment, hands on the wheel, mind racing. Raphael Cade had tried to poison him in the one place he'd felt safe. Had used a method designed to kill him quietly, professionally, without a trace. It was smart. It was calculated. It was cowardly. And it told Casper everything he needed to know. Raphael wasn't just trying to kill him. He was trying to erase him, to make it look like the great Casper Lainertz had simply stopped. No war, no bloodshed, just a heart attack in the night. Clean, forgettable. Casper started the engine. Raphael wanted a quiet death. He was going to get a loud reckoning. 7 years ago, Casper Lainertz and Raphael Cade had been kings. Not officially, not publicly, but in the world that mattered, the world of backroom deals, offshore accounts, and cargo containers that never appeared on manifests. They'd ruled together. It started small. A mutual contact introduced them at a warehouse on the docks. Raphael had the connections overseas. Casper had the distribution network. Within 6 months, They were moving product through 3 major cities. Within a year, they'd doubled their territory. 50-50 split. Equal partnership. No ego, no power plays. At least, that's what Casper had believed. They met every week at a different location, never the same place twice. Coffee shops, hotel lobbies. Once, memorably, on a yacht neither of them owned, they'd talk numbers, routes, problems that needed solving. Raphael was smart, sharp. He had a degree in economics from some European university Casper couldn't pronounce, and he approached crime like a business calculated risk, optimized return, minimal exposure. Casper respected that. Hell, he'd liked Raphael. They'd been friends, until the night everything fractured. Casper drove through the city now, the memory playing in his mind like a film he couldn't pause. It had been a Thursday, late autumn. They'd met at a restaurant not unlike Bellagio, Nero upscale, discreet, the kind of place where cash spoke louder than credit cards. Raphael had seemed off that night, distracted. He'd ordered scotch instead of his usual wine, downed it in 2 swallows, and ordered another. Something wrong? Casper had asked. No. Raphael's smile had been tight, forced. Just tired. They'd discussed the usual business, a shipment delayed at customs, a competitor moving into their territory, profit margins that needed adjusting. Normal problems, solvable problems. But when the check came, Raphael had said something that made Casper pause. I've been thinking. About the split. Casper had set down his glass. What about it? Raphael leaned forward, elbows on the table. I bring in the suppliers. I negotiate the prices. I handle the international logistics. You distribute locally. He'd paused, letting the words settle. Doesn't seem like an equal workload. The air between them had changed. You want to renegotiate, Casper said carefully. I want what's fair. 50-50 is fair. We agreed. We agreed when we were smaller. Things have changed. Casper's jaw had tightened. What split do you want? 70-30. In my favor. Silence. Casper had stared at Raphael across the table, this man he'd trusted. This partner he'd built an empire with and seen something he hadn't expected. Greed. Not the practical kind. Not the strategic kind. The kind that consumed. No, Casper had said quietly. Raphael's expression hardened. No, we're equal partners. That doesn't change because you've decided you're worth more. I am worth more. Then walk away. Casper's voice had been calm, but the threat underneath was steel. Take your connections. Start over. See how far you get without my network. Raphael had laughed a bitter, ugly sound. You'd let me walk? I'd let you live. The words hung between them like a blade. Raphael had gone quiet. For a long moment, he just stared at Casper, weighing his options, measuring the distance between ambition and survival. Finally, he'd stood. Fine. Keep your 50%. I'm done. He'd walked out without another word. Casper had let him go. And for 7 years, Raphael Cade had been a ghost. No contact, no revenge, no interference. Casper had assumed the matter was settled, that Raphael had moved on, started fresh somewhere else, learned to be satisfied with what he'd earned. He'd been wrong. Raphael hadn't moved on. He'd been waiting. Casper pulled into an underground parking garage, one he owned under a shell company 3 layers deep. He killed the engine and sat in the darkness, hands still gripping the wheel. His phone buzzed. A message from his lieutenant. Update. Cade met with someone tonight. We got photos. An image loaded, grainy, taken from distance, but clear enough. Raphael Cade stood outside a private club, mid-conversation with a man Casper didn't recognize. European, by the look of him. Expensive suit, calm demeanor. Another photo. The 2 men shaking hands. A third, Raphael handing over an envelope. Casper zoomed in. The envelope was thick. Cash most likely, or instructions. Who's the contact? Casper typed, still running his face. But the club he's at? Invitation only. Owned by the Volsky family. Casper's jaw clenched. The Volskys. Russian syndicate. Old money, older connections. They'd been trying to expand into Casper's territory for years, but he'd kept them out through a combination of strategic alliances and well-placed threats. If Raphael was working with them now. Keep digging, Casper typed. I want names, financials, every meeting they've had. Copy that? Casper put the phone down and closed his eyes. Raphael hadn't just tried to kill him, he'd sold him out. The poison was a tactic, remove Casper quietly. then let the Volskys move in and carve up his territory like a holiday roast. Raphael would get his cut. Probably more than 70% this time. Probably everything. And no one would ever trace it back to him. It was brilliant. It was thorough. It was exactly the kind of plan Raphael would design. Casper's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't his lieutenant. It was Ellie. Ellie, I can't sleep. Casper stared at the message. He should tell her to take something, to rest, to stop thinking about tonight. Instead, he called her. She picked up on the second ring. Hello? You okay? He asked. I don't know. Her voice was small, tired. Every time I close my eyes, I see that plate. I hear the manager on the phone. I keep thinking, what if I'd been 1 minute later? What if you'd already… She didn't finish. You weren't, Casper said quietly. And I didn't. But I can't stop thinking about it. That's normal, is it? She laughed weakly. Because I feel like I'm losing my mind. Casper leaned back in his seat. You did something most people couldn't. You acted when your body was telling you to run. That takes a toll. How do you do it? She asked suddenly. Live like this. Every day. I don't think about it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. Casper? Ellie said softly. Yeah. Thank you. For the guards. For the time off. For… She trailed off. For not being angry at me. Why would I be angry? I don't know. I thought maybe you'd think I was interfering. Or overstepping. Or… Ellie. His voice was firm but gentle. You saved my life. I don't get angry at people who save my life. She exhaled shakily. Okay. Get some rest. I mean it. You too. I will. He wouldn't. They both knew it. But she let him hang up anyway. Casper sat in the dark garage for another 10 minutes, thinking. Raphael had tried to erase him. Had sold him out to the Volskys. Had poisoned his favorite meal in his favorite place. And tomorrow, Casper was going to remind Raphael why he'd let him walk away alive 7 years ago. Not out of mercy. Out of respect for what they'd built together. But respect, Casper thought coldly, had an expiration date. And Raphael's had just run out. Morning arrived cold and gray. The kind of dawn that made the city look tired. Casper hadn't slept. He'd gone home around 3 a.m, showered, changed into a fresh suit, charcoal gray this time, black shirt, no tie, and returned to his office by 5. The office sat above a legitimate shipping company he owned, tucked into the industrial district where questions were never asked. His desk faced floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the docks. Ships moved like shadows through the fog. Cranes swung cargo containers in slow, mechanical rhythms. His phone had been buzzing since sunrise. Lieutenant, Volsky contact identified. Name, Dmitry Sokolov. Financial advisor, handles offshore accounts for the family. Lieutenant, cross-reference transactions. Cade received $2.3 million 3 weeks ago. Same day the manager was contacted. Lieutenant, Cade's estate is under surveillance. No movement yet. He's staying inside. Casper read each message carefully, his expression unreadable. Raphael had taken Volsky money, had used it to fund an assassination, had planned to profit from Casper's death while the Russians carved up his territory. It was betrayal on a scale that required precision, patience, planning. Casper respected the craftsmanship even as he prepared to destroy it. He typed a response. Begin Phase 1. Quietly. Understood. Phase 1 was simple. Isolation. Raphael Cade had built his new operation on relationships, contacts, suppliers, brokers who moved money and product through invisible channels. He'd spent 7 years cultivating those connections, rebuilding what he'd walked away from. Casper was about to burn it all down. Within 2 hours, the first domino fell. A supplier in Amsterdam received a visit from someone claiming to work for the Dutch Customs Authority. Documents were requested. Irregularities were mentioned. The supplier panicked, severed all ties with Raphael's operation, and disappeared. An hour later, a shipping broker in Singapore got a phone call. Quiet, professional. Someone explaining that their mutual associate Raphael Cade was about to become a liability, that anyone still working with him would be considered complicit. The broker chose survival. By noon, 3 more contacts had gone dark. Raphael's network was collapsing, and he didn't even know it yet. Casper's lieutenant called just after 1. Boss, we've got movement. Where? Buth. Cade just made 6 calls in 20 minutes. All to contacts we've already flipped or scared off. None of them answered. Casper leaned back in his chair, a ghost of a smile on his lips. He's starting to notice. He's also reaching out to the Volskys. We intercepted a message to Sokolov. Says he needs to meet. Urgent. Let him meet, Casper said calmly. I want to know what he tells them. You think he'll mention you? He'll have to. His operation is falling apart. He'll need their help to figure out why. And when they realize you're behind it, then we'll see how loyal they really are. The lieutenant paused. You think they'll cut him loose? I know they will. Casper's voice was cold, certain. The Volskys don't invest in weakness. Raphael's value was his network. Without it, he's just a man who failed to kill me. What's phase 2? Financial pressure. Freeze his accounts, all of them. Offshore, domestic, everything. I want him bleeding money by tonight. On it. The call ended. Casper stood and walked to the window, watching the ships move through the harbor. Somewhere out there, Raphael was scrambling, making calls that went unanswered, watching his empire dissolve like salt in water. It was almost poetic. Across the city, in a fortified estate surrounded by walls and cameras, Raphael Cade sat in his study, phone pressed to his ear, knuckles white. Pick up, he muttered. Come on, pick up. The call went to voicemail. Again. He hung up and immediately dialed another number. Same result. 6 contacts. 6 deadlines. Raphael's chest tightened. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. This was coordinated. He opened his laptop and logged into his offshore account, the one the Volskys had funded. The one that held his safety net, his exit strategy. Account frozen. Contact bank for details. His blood went cold. He tried another account. Same message. A third. Frozen. No. He whispered. No, no, no. His phone buzzed. A text from Dmitry Sokolov. We need to talk. Now. Raphael's hands shook as he typed back. Where? Same place. 1 hour. Raphael stared at the message. The Volskys never demanded emergency meetings unless something was very, very wrong. And he already knew what that something was. Casper Lenertz. Raphael had underestimated him. He'd thought the poison would work. Thought it would be clean, quiet, untraceable. Thought Casper would die in his sleep, and the world would move on. But Casper wasn't dead, and now he was coming. Raphael stood, pacing the study, mind racing. He had security, cameras, armed guards. The estate was a fortress, but fortresses, he knew, could become prisons. He grabbed his jacket and keys. He needed to meet Sokolov, needed to explain, needed to convince the Volskys that this was salvageable, that Casper could still be handled, that the plan could still work. He just needed time. 1 hour later, Raphael walked into the private club where he'd met Sokolov before. The same booth, the same dim lighting, the same feeling that he was being watched from every shadow. Dmitry Sokolov sat waiting, impeccably dressed, expression unreadable. Raphael slid into the seat across from him. We have a problem. I know. Sokolov's voice was smooth, accented, dangerous. Your network is collapsing. Your accounts are frozen. And Casper Lenertz is very much alive. Raphael's jaw clenched. I can fix this. Can you? Sokolov leaned forward slightly. Because from where I sit, it looks like you've started a war you can't win. I just need... Time? Sokolov smiled coldly. Time is what you've run out of, Mr. Cade. The Volsky family invested in you because you promised results. Clean removal of a competitor, territory expansion, profit, and you'll still get that. Will we? Sokolov's eyes were ice. Because right now, all we have is a failed assassination and an enemy who knows exactly who funded it. Raphael's stomach dropped. He doesn't know about you. I made sure. He knows. Sokolov's voice was final. Casper Lenertz didn't build his empire by being blind. He's traced the money. He's identified me. And now my family has a decision to make. What decision? Sokolov stood, buttoning his jacket. Whether you're an asset worth protecting or a liability that needs to be removed. Raphael shot to his feet. You can't. The deal, Sokolov said calmly, was contingent on success. You failed. He turned toward the door, then paused. One piece of advice, Mr. Cade. If I were you, I'd disappear. Tonight. Because when the Volskys cut ties, Casper Lenertz will be the least of your problems. He walked out. Raphael stood frozen, the weight of his situation crushing down on him. He'd tried to kill Casper quietly. Now Casper was dismantling his life piece by piece, and the people Raphael had thought were allies were already stepping back, letting him fall. Across town, Casper's phone buzzed. "Lieutenant, Volsky's just cut contact with Cade. Sokolov told him he's on his own." Casper read the message twice. Casper. Good. Now he's isolated, scared, desperate. What's next? Casper stared out at the darkening city. Casper. Now we go see him. The estate sat 40 minutes north of the city, hidden behind stone walls and iron gates that promised privacy but delivered paranoia. Casper arrived just after midnight. No convoy, no spectacle, just 2 cars, his, and one for his most trusted men. They parked a quarter-mile down the road, lights off, engines silent. The estate's security was exactly what Casper expected. Cameras on every corner, motion sensors along the perimeter, guards rotating in predictable patterns. Professional, but not imaginative. Raphael had always relied too much on technology, on systems, on the illusion that walls and cameras could keep him safe. He'd forgotten the most important rule. Locks only work if people fear breaking them. Casper's lieutenant leaned in from the passenger seat. "Security's tight, but we can breach it. 15 minutes, maybe less." "No," Casper said quietly. "We walk through the front door." The lieutenant blinked. "Boss? Call ahead. Tell them I'm here to talk. Tell them if Raphael doesn't let me in, I'll come in anyway and it won't be quiet." The lieutenant hesitated, then nodded and made the call. 2 minutes later, the estate's front gates swung open. Inside the mansion, Raphael Cade stood in his study, hands trembling, staring at the security monitor. Casper Lenertz walked up the driveway like he owned it. No weapons visible, no aggression, just calm, measured steps, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Raphael's head of security stood beside him, assault rifle gripped tight. "Say the word, Mr. Cade. We can end this." Raphael's mouth was dry. "No. If we shoot him, his people will burn this place to the ground with us inside. Then what do we do?" Raphael watched Casper approach the front door, watched him stop, watched him wait. "We talk," Raphael whispered. He didn't believe it would help. But he didn't see another choice. The front door opened. Casper stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His eyes swept the foyer marble floors. Expensive art, a chandelier that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Raphael had done well for himself. Built something comfortable, something soft. 2 guards flanked the entrance, weapons ready but not aimed. Casper ignored them. His gaze locked on Raphael, who stood at the top of the staircase, trying to look composed and failing. "Casper," Raphael said. His voice cracked slightly. "I wasn't expecting you." "Yes, you were." Casper's voice was calm, almost conversational. "You've been expecting me since the moment you realized the poison didn't work." Raphael descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. "I don't know what you're talking about," Casper smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Don't insult me, Raphael. Not now." They stood 15 feet apart. The guards shifted nervously. The air felt electric, dangerous, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Library," Raphael said finally. "We'll talk there." Casper nodded once. The library was all dark, wood and leather, bookshelves lining the walls, a desk positioned near the fireplace. Raphael poured himself a drink, scotch, 3 fingers, no ice. His hands shook. Casper remained standing, hands still in his pockets, posture relaxed. "Sit," Raphael offered, gesturing to a chair. "I'm fine." Raphael downed half the scotch. "You've destroyed everything, you know that? My contacts, my accounts, my reputation. You tried to poison me," Casper said simply. "What did you expect?" "I expected you to die." The words came out bitter, angry. Raphael slammed the glass down on the desk. "I expected you to finally pay for 7 years of standing in my way. I let you walk away. You dismissed me." Raphael's voice rose. "You treated me like I was disposable, like I didn't matter. You wanted more than you'd earned. I earned everything." Raphael's face flushed red. "I brought you the suppliers. I negotiated the deals. I built the infrastructure that made you rich. And you just distributed it locally and acted like we were equals." Casper's expression didn't change. "We were equals. 50-50. That was the deal. The deal was wrong." Raphael's chest heaved. "I deserved more. I deserved everything. So you sold me out to the Volskys." Raphael froze. "You took their money," Casper continued calmly. "You hired someone to poison me. You planned to let them carve up my territory while you watched from a distance and collected your cut. He tilted his head slightly. How much were they paying you? 70%? 80? Raphael's jaw clenched. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Why? Raphael laughed bitterly. So you can feel justified when you kill me? So you can tell yourself I deserved it? No. Casper stepped closer. So I can understand when you stopped being my partner and started being my enemy. Raphael looked away. The night you said no, when I asked for 70-30. His voice dropped. That's when, because I wouldn't give you more. Because you didn't see me. Raphael's voice cracked. 7 years, Casper. 7 years I worked in your shadow, and you never once acknowledged that I was the reason we succeeded. That's not true. Isn't it? Raphael met his eyes. You kept everything compartmentalized. You controlled the distribution. You made the final decisions. I was just the supplier, the foreign contact, the guy who made the deals you took credit for. Casper was silent for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. Raphael blinked. What? You built half that empire. Maybe more. Casper's voice was steady, honest. And I didn't give you the credit you deserved. I kept you at a distance because that's how I operate. Control, compartmentalization, trust no one completely. Raphael's throat tightened. But you know what you did wrong? Casper's eyes hardened. Instead of walking away and building something better, you tried to destroy me. You didn't just want out. You wanted revenge. You wanted me erased. Yes. Raphael's voice was barely a whisper. I did. Why? Because I hated you. The words came out raw, honest. I hated that you were fine without me, that you kept building, that you didn't need me. Casper studied him, this man he'd once called friend, this partner he'd trusted, this ghost who'd haunted him for 7 years. You could have had everything, Raphael. You could have started fresh, built your own empire, made your own name. I didn't want my own empire. Raphael's eyes glistened. I wanted ours, and you took it from me. No, Casper said quietly. You walked away from it. Because you gave me no choice. I gave you the only choice that mattered. Life or death. You chose life. You chose to leave. Casper's voice dropped. And then you spent 7 years regretting it. Raphael said nothing. He just stared at the floor, shoulders sagging, the fight draining out of him. The Volskys cut you loose, Casper said. You know that, right? Raphael nodded. Your network is gone. Your money is frozen. Your guards won't die for you. And in about 6 hours, everyone in the underworld will know you tried to kill me and failed. Raphael closed his eyes. So what now? Casper pulled his hands from his pockets. Now you answer one question. What? If the poison had worked, if I died in my sleep like you planned, would you have felt anything? Regret? Guilt? Or would you have just moved on? Raphael looked up, tears streaking his face. I don't know, he whispered. Casper nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He turned toward the door. Casper, Raphael's voice broke. What happens to me? Casper paused, hand on the doorframe. He didn't turn around. You wanted everything, Raphael. Now you have nothing. His voice was cold, final. That's what happens. He walked out. Raphael stood alone in the library, the weight of his choices crushing down on him, knowing that the man who'd once let him walk away alive would not make that mistake twice. Casper walked out of the mansion into the cold night air, his footsteps echoing across the marble entryway. His men waited by the cars, tense and ready, hands near concealed weapons. They watched him approach, searching his face for orders, for direction, for the violence they'd been trained to deliver. Casper stopped at the hood of his car and turned back toward the mansion. Light spilled from the library window on the second floor. Through the glass, he could see Raphael's silhouette slumped, defeated, a shadow of the man who'd once built empires. Boss, his lieutenant asked quietly. What do we do? Casper stared at that window for a long moment. 7 years ago, he'd let Raphael walk away. He'd chosen mercy over message, restraint over retribution. He'd believed that Raphael would take his second chance and build something new, something separate, something that didn't require destroying what they'd built together. He'd been wrong. Raphael hadn't wanted a second chance. He'd wanted revenge, and that desire, that consuming, patient hatred had led him here. To this moment, to this ending. Nothing, Casper said finally. His men exchanged confused glances. Boss? The lieutenant pressed. He tried to kill you. He sold you out to the Volskys. I know what he did. Casper's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something cold and final. And now he has to live with it. I don't understand. Casper turned to face his lieutenant. Raphael Cade built his identity on being powerful, on being important, on being necessary. He gestured toward the mansion. Now he's none of those things. His network is gone. His money is frozen. His allies abandoned him. And every person in our world will know he failed. The lieutenant's eyes widened slightly. You're leaving him alive. I'm leaving him broken. Casper's expression was unreadable. Death would be mercy. This is justice. He slid into the driver's seat. Spread the word, he continued. Raphael Cade tried to poison me and failed. He worked with the Volskys and got cut loose. He's alone, vulnerable, and untouchable. Untouchable? No one touches him. Not us. Not anyone. Casper's eyes were steel. I want him to wake up every morning knowing he's alive because I allow it. I want him to see what he could have had and know he threw it away for nothing. The lieutenant nodded slowly. Understood. Casper started the engine. And contact the manager, the one from Bellagio Nero. What about him? Let him go. He was a tool, not an enemy. Tell him if he ever speaks about what happened, the deal is off. But if he stays quiet, his family stays safe. You're going soft, boss, the lieutenant said carefully. Casper's smile was razor-thin. No, I'm being efficient. Killing scared men accomplishes nothing. Killing Raphael accomplishes nothing. But letting them both live with their choices? He pulled away from the estate. That sends a message no body ever could. The drive back to the city was quiet. Casper's mind wandered not to Raphael, not to the Volskys, but to Ellie. She'd saved his life 4 days ago. 4 days that felt like 4 years. He'd told her to take time off, to stay safe, to let him handle everything. And she'd listened. His men reported she'd stayed home, barely left her apartment, jumped at every unexpected sound. She was traumatized, shaken, and it was his fault. Not directly. He hadn't asked her to overhear that phone call, hadn't asked her to risk everything to save him, but his world, his choices, his enemies, his life had pulled her into danger anyway. That's what his world did. It consumed, it destroyed. It took good people and turned their courage into liability. Casper gripped the steering wheel tighter. He'd spent his entire adult life accepting that reality, embracing it, building power on top of it. But now, thinking of Ellie sitting alone in her apartment with guards outside her door, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, guilt. He pulled out his phone at a red light and typed, "It's over." The response came immediately. Ellie. Over? Casper. The threat. The person responsible. It's handled. Ellie. Are you okay? There it was again. That question no one else asked. Casper. Yes. Are you? Ellie. I don't know yet. The light turned green. Casper drove. Casper. Tomorrow. Bellagio Nero. Noon. Just you and me. Ellie. Why? Casper. Because you deserve answers. And I owe you more than money. A long pause. Then, Ellie. Okay. Back at the estate, Raphael Cade sat in the dark library, staring at nothing. The scotch bottle was empty. His phone was silent. His guards had disappeared, not fled, just withdrawn. They'd been paid to protect him, not die for him. And they knew the difference. He was alone, truly, completely alone. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed. 2 a.m. Raphael stood on shaking legs and walked to the window. The driveway was empty. The gates were still open. Casper had walked away. No gunshot, no blade, no body in the study. Just nothing. Raphael pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He'd wanted everything. He'd planned for years. He'd aligned with the Volskys, hired professionals, executed the perfect assassination attempt. And he'd failed. Not because Casper was smarter. Not because the plan was flawed. But because one waitress, one ordinary, insignificant woman, had chosen courage over silence. Raphael laughed. A hollow, broken sound. All his intelligence. All his planning. All his resources. Undone by a waitress who'd simply done the right thing. He slid down the wall and sat on the floor, head in his hands. Casper had been right. Walking away would have been the smart choice. Building something new. Starting over. But Raphael's pride, his ego, his need to be seen had demanded more, and now he had nothing. No empire, no allies, no future, just the suffocating weight of his own choices. Across the city, In a modest apartment with secondhand furniture and plants on the windowsill, Ellie Thomas couldn't sleep. She'd tried. Read a book, made tea, stared at the ceiling. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the poisoned plate, heard the manager's voice, felt the terror that had driven her to scream across a restaurant. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Casper. Casper, thank you. She stared at the words. Ellie. For what? Casper. For seeing me as someone worth saving. Tears blurred her vision. She typed back quickly. Ellie. Everyone's worth saving, Casper. No, they're not. But I'm grateful you think I am. Ellie set the phone down and pulled her knees to her chest. She'd saved a man's life. A dangerous man. A man whose world operated on violence and fear and power. And somehow, impossibly, he'd thanked her for it. Not with money, though that would come. She knew. But with honesty. With vulnerability. With something that felt almost like respect. She didn't understand Casper Lenertz. But she believed him when he said it was over. And tomorrow, she'd get her answers. Dawn broke over the city, cold, gray, indifferent. Casper stood at his office window, watching the sun rise over the docks. Raphael was alive. Broken, but alive. The Volskys had retreated, cutting their losses. The manager would keep quiet, his family safe. And Ellie. Ellie would get the truth she deserved. Casper's phone buzzed one last time. His lieutenant. All quiet. Cade hasn't left the estate. Word spreading. Everyone knows. Casper typed back. Good. Make sure it stays that way. He pocketed his phone and allowed himself a rare moment of stillness. The war was over. Not with blood. Not with bodies. But with something far more permanent. Consequence. Raphael Cade would live the rest of his life knowing he'd tried to kill Casper Lenertz and failed. That he'd aligned with the Volskys and been abandoned. That his empire had crumbled in 72 hours. And every morning he woke up alive. He'd know it was because Casper had allowed it. That was a far crueler punishment than death. Casper smiled faintly. Then he turned away from the window and prepared for noon. Bellagio Nero looked different in daylight. The amber glow that made everything feel cinematic at night was replaced by harsh natural light streaming through the windows. The restaurant sat empty, not closed, but cleared. Casper had bought out the entire lunch service. Just one table, one guest. Ellie arrived at exactly noon. She stood outside the entrance for a moment, staring at the door like it might bite her. Her hands twisted the strap of her purse. She'd changed clothes 3 times that morning, finally settling on jeans and a simple sweater, nothing fancy, nothing that screamed she was trying too hard. The door opened before she could knock. One of Casper's men stood there, the younger one with kind eyes and a scar on his chin. The one who'd driven her home that first night. Miss Thomas, he said respectfully. He's waiting inside. Ellie nodded and stepped through. The restaurant was silent, except for soft classical music playing from hidden speakers. Every table was empty except one, the corner booth where Casper always sat. He stood when he saw her. Black suit again, no tie. Hair perfectly styled, but something about him looked softer, less dangerous, almost human. Ellie, he said quietly. Casper. Her voice was steadier than she felt. He gestured to the seat across from him. Please. She slid into the booth. He sat down after she did a small courtesy that surprised her. Thank you for coming, he said. You said I deserved answers. You do. A waiter appeared, not the usual staff. Someone Casper trusted and set down 2 glasses of water, then disappeared without a word. Ellie took a sip, buying time. Is it really over? Yes. The person who tried to poison you is no longer a threat. Did you? She couldn't finish the question. Casper understood anyway. No, I didn't kill him. Relief flooded her face. But he's broken, Casper continued. Financially, professionally, personally. He'll live the rest of his life knowing he failed and that I let him survive. He paused. Sometimes that's worse than death. Ellie processed this. So it's mercy. It's consequence. She met his eyes. What about the manager? The one who actually put the poison in your food. He's free, with a warning. His family is safe as long as he stays quiet. You let him go too. He was a tool, coerced, threatened. Casper's expression softened slightly. I'm not interested in punishing desperate men. I'm interested in eliminating actual threats. Ellie exhaled slowly. I don't know if I understand your world. You're not supposed to. Then why am I here? Casper reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Thick, heavy. He slid it across the table. Ellie stared at it like it might explode. What is this? Open it. She did. Slowly. Carefully. Inside was cash. More cash than she'd ever seen in one place. Stacks of $100 bills bound neatly. She didn't count it, but she knew instantly it was life-changing. Beneath the cash was a handwritten note on expensive paper. You saved me. Remember that. Her hands trembled. Casper, I can't. Yes, you can. This is too much. It's not enough. His voice was firm but gentle. You risked your life for someone you barely knew, someone you had every reason to fear. You could have stayed silent, could have walked away, could have let me die. I couldn't. But you could have. He leaned forward. Most people would have. Most people do. They see something wrong and they convince themselves it's not their problem, that someone else will handle it, that getting involved isn't worth the risk. Ellie's throat tightened. You didn't do that. Casper continued. You ran toward danger. You screamed in a room full of armed men. You saved my life without knowing if I'd thank you or kill you for interfering. I couldn't let you die. Not like that. I know. His expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. And that's why you're different. Tears pooled in her eyes. I'm not special. I just did what anyone should do. Exactly. Casper's voice dropped. You did what anyone should do. But no one does anymore. Not in my world. Not in any world. Ellie wiped her eyes quickly. So what does this mean? The money. The note. What do you want from me? Nothing. She blinked. Nothing? Nothing, he repeated. You don't work for me. You don't owe me. You're not part of this world and you never will be. He gestured to the envelope. That money is yours. Use it however you want. Quit this job. Go back to school. Travel. Start over. Whatever you need. I don't understand. You saved me, Ellie. Not because you wanted something. Not because you were afraid. Not because I'd paid you. His voice was steady, honest. You saved me because you believed it was the right thing to do. And in my world, that's rare, precious. Ellie's chest ached. What if I want to keep working here? Casper smiled faintly. Then you keep working here. But you'll never work another shift you don't want to. You'll never serve another customer who disrespects you. And you'll never worry about rent or bills or survival again. That's not fair to everyone else. Life isn't fair. Casper's tone wasn't harsh, just factual. But you did something extraordinary. And extraordinary actions deserve extraordinary rewards. Ellie stared at the envelope. At the money. At the note. You saved me. Remember that. Why does it matter? She asked quietly. That I remember? Casper was silent for a long moment. Because, he said finally, in my world, people save me for the wrong reasons. Out of fear, out of obligation, out of calculation. He met her eyes. You saved me for the right reason. And I need to remember that people like you still exist. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away this time. Thank you, she whispered. No. Casper's voice was soft. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable, just present. Finally, Ellie picked up the envelope and stood. I should go. Casper stood as well. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Day or night. No questions asked. I will. I mean it, Ellie. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. Gratitude. Real, unguarded, human gratitude. I know you do, she said softly. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Casper? Yeah? Be careful. Whatever world you live in, just be careful. He smiled a real smile this time. I will. She left, and Casper stood alone in the empty restaurant, staring at the table where a poisoned plate had sat 4 days ago, the table where everything had changed. Casper sat alone at the table long after Ellie left. The restaurant was still silent, still empty, still his. He picked up his phone and scrolled through messages. Updates from his lieutenants, confirmations that Raphael's isolation was complete, reports that the Volskys had officially withdrawn from any plans to enter his territory. Everything was resolved. Everything was handled. And yet, something felt different. Not wrong, not unsettled, just different. Casper had spent 20 years building power on fear, on calculated violence, on the understanding that mercy was weakness and hesitation was death. He'd survived by being harder, colder, more ruthless than everyone around him. But Ellie Thomas, a waitress who'd earned maybe $30,000 a year, who'd had no weapons, no training, no protection, had done something he'd never managed. She'd acted without calculation. She'd chosen courage over survival. She'd saved a life not because it benefited her, but because letting someone die was unthinkable. And that choice, that simple, impossible choice, had exposed something Casper had buried years ago: conscience. He'd thought he'd killed it, starved it, locked it away so deep it could never surface. But Ellie's scream, "Don't eat that," had cracked something open inside him. A question he'd stopped asking himself long ago. Who would I be if I made different choices? Casper stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city moved. People walked to lunch meetings. Couples held hands. Street vendors sold coffee and pastries. Normal life. Ordinary life. The kind of life he'd abandoned to build an empire. His phone buzzed. His lieutenant, "Everything's quiet." "What's next, boss?" Casper stared at the message. What was next? More deals, more territory, more power. The same cycle he'd been running for 2 decades. But now, standing in the empty restaurant where he'd almost died, Casper wondered if there was something else. Something beyond survival and dominance and control. He typed back, "Take the day off, everyone. We've earned it." "You sure?" Casper. "Yeah, I'm sure." He pocketed his phone and turned back to the table. The envelope was gone. Ellie had taken it, taken her reward, taken her second chance, and Casper had given it to her without hesitation, not because he owed her, though he did, not because it was strategic, though it was, but because it felt right. And that feeling, that unfamiliar, uncomfortable, dangerously human feeling, was something he hadn't experienced in years. He thought about Raphael, about the empire they'd built together, about the moment it had all fallen apart, not because of external threats, not because of miscalculation, but because Raphael had stopped seeing him as a partner and started seeing him as an obstacle. That's what power did. It isolated. It consumed. It turned allies into enemies and friendships into transactions. Casper had accepted that reality. But Ellie had shown him something different. That loyalty could exist without fear. That courage could exist without reward. That sometimes, the most dangerous thing you could do was the right thing. He walked to the kitchen, the same kitchen where the manager had confessed, where the poison had been stored, where everything had started. The staff was back now. The restaurant would reopen tomorrow. Life would return to normal. But Casper knew nothing would be quite the same. The chef looked up nervously when Casper entered. "Mr. Lenertz, can I get you something?" "No." Casper's voice was calm. "I just wanted to say thank you." The chef blinked. "For what?" "For running a clean kitchen, for treating your staff well, for making this place what it is." The chef looked confused but nodded. "Of course, sir." Casper left before the man could ask questions. Outside, the winter air was sharp and cold. Casper stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching people pass. No one recognized him. No one stared. No one knew that the man standing there in the expensive suit controlled half the city's underworld. He was just a person. And for a moment, just a moment, that felt okay. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ellie. "Ellie, I counted the money. This is insane. Are you sure?" Casper smiled. "Casper, I'm sure. You earned it." "Ellie, I don't know what to say." "Casper, don't say anything. Just live the life you want. That's all I ask." A long pause. Then, "Ellie, thank you. For everything. For being different than I expected." "Casper, you too." He pocketed his phone and started walking. Not to his car, not to his office, just walking. Past restaurants, past shops, past people living their ordinary lives. And for the first time in years, Casper Lenertz didn't think about power. He thought about a waitress who'd screamed across a restaurant to save his life. He thought about Raphael, broken and alone. He thought about the manager, free but forever marked. He thought about the choice he'd made to let them both live, to let consequence be the punishment, to let mercy coexist with justice. And he realized something profound. Power survived through fear, but empires endured through loyalty, not the loyalty bought with money, not the loyalty enforced with violence, but the loyalty earned through respect, through fairness, through seeing people as more than tools or obstacles or transactions. Ellie had been loyal to a principle, to the idea that life mattered, that saving someone was worth the risk, that doing the right thing was never wrong, and that loyalty, pure, uncalculated, selfless, had saved him in ways he was only beginning to understand. Casper stopped at a corner and looked back at Bellagio Nero, his sanctuary, his kingdom. the place where he'd almost died, and the place where he'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was listen when someone screamed, "Don't eat that," not because they wanted something, not because they feared you, but because they believed truly, impossibly believed that you were worth saving. Casper turned away and disappeared into the city. The underworld would still fear him tomorrow, but tonight, he carried something more valuable than fear, hope, that maybe, just maybe, there was still room in his world for people like Ellie Thomas, people who chose courage over calculation, people who acted without asking what they'd gain, people who reminded him that beneath the power, the violence, the empire, he was still human, and being human meant he could still choose, every single day, to be better, to do better, to be the man Ellie Thomas had believed was worth saving. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.